Mary had a little man.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Ketanji Brown Jackson, do solemnly swear.
I, Ketanji Brown Jackson, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you very
crossed,
much. And now
everybody.
I'll turn things
Fingers
over to
crossed.
Justice Breyer.
I want you to listen to the judge's oath.
The
I want you to hear it.
judicial oath. Will you raise your right hand, please? Thank you. I, Ketanji Brown Jackson,
I, Ketanji Brown Jackson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will administer justice
that I will administer justice
without respect to persons
without respect to persons
and do equal right
and do equal right
to the poor and to the rich,
to the poor and to the rich,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon me as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States.
As an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States.
Under the Constitution
and
laws of the United States.
And laws of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Now, on behalf of all of the members of the court, I am pleased to welcome Justice Jackson to the court and to our common calling.
Congratulations. That right there might be the last time we view the peaceful transfer of power. Oh, hello. That's history right there. That is an amazing thing. I hope everybody will remember where they were at noon today, Eastern Time, when Ketanji Brown Jackson was sworn in as the 104th Associate Justice on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, and was sworn in a peaceful transfer of power from Breyer to her without riots, without saying that the Senate was rigged, without saying that it's not fair, it's not good, without threatening anybody. It's just it's. And also, I hope that you'll remember, this might be the last time that the judicial oath doesn't include allegiance to the Bible, because it doesn't. It didn't, and it doesn't. So just so you know, so this is truly historic. For the first time in our history as a country, an African-American woman was sworn in to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States so that she can write dissenting minority opinions for decades. Please make a note of it. But, something good could come from this in this way. Clarence Thomas might get so tired of having to share his office space with all these libtard women that he just might up and quit. Wouldn't that be good? Because the balance of the court has not changed. And this court has been the most judicially activist court I have ever seen in our lifetimes, ever. They have rewritten so much American law in this last session of the Supreme Court. They have done so much damage to the fabric of our democracy in just one session of a 6-3 Supreme Court. They have destroyed states' rights. You know what's interesting about Ketanji Brown Jackson? You remember that one of the things that was very appealing about her, not just that she sat on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, which, is like amazing, but that she, at the beginning, not just that she was a clerk for the Supreme Court or any of those great things that she had done, but that she had also, after being a clerk for the Supreme Court, had gone... I mean, you can write your ticket at that point, and you can go to work for any of the major law firms and go make obscene amounts of cash, being a, corporate lawyer, whatever. She chose to be a public defender. And this session of the Supreme Court, it's so easy to forget because there have been so many disgusting, damaging, violative, deadly, dark decisions from this court. It's easy to forget that they did damage to the Miranda rights that we've all come to know and love. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you, right, at no cost to you. They did, and so as a public defender, when she saw that as the opening salvo to the decisions that were about to just erupt throughout our democracy, throughout our republic, throughout our legal system, she must have been chomping at the bit to get to work as at least an associate justice on the Supreme Court. Because even though it doesn't change the balance of the court, she will be writing minority dissents for decades to come. So, but, in a sense, the liberal justices are stuck. They're stuck in the minority. But one good thing to think about them, one way you could characterize what they do, what Elena Kagan does, what Sonia Sotomayor does, what Ketanji Brown Jackson will be doing, is they're like Serpico. They're like undercover cops, who have managed to infiltrate an organized crime, racket. They're inside the empire now. They're inside the Dark Star. They can't bring it down, but they can monitor it and make a note of what needs fixing as they destroy crap. So, this is a momentous and groundbreaking moment in our history, even if the liberal wing is not currently positioned to win a lot of cases. She can still make her mark. Okay, for the sports-minded, let's put it this way. Jackie Robinson played for the Brooklyn Dodgers for 10 years? Right? And they lost the World Series to the Yankees 5 times. So KBJ may end up on the losing side of a lot of things that are about to come decision-wise, but in the end, she's the one who will end up in the Hall of Fame and having her number retired. But I must tell you that as historic a day this is, it's historic for bad reasons, too. Not only did this particular Supreme Court do away with, the ability to sue if they forget or overlook or decide not to read you your Miranda rights, you can't sue anymore. You can't do that. They just, basically said, you don't need to do that. You don't need to read people their rights anymore. But they also, just said to America, that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, doesn't have the ability to regulate power plants. What is the job of the Environmental Protection Agency if the agency isn't imbued by the president with the power to regulate power plants? You see what I mean? They just gutted the Clean Air Act, which is basically what they were sent there to do by the big dark money. So here in America, we're not safe from being shot on the streets anymore in densely populated cities by people who want to conceal carry for bad reasons. We're going to die either by bullets or wire hangers, and now add to it droughts, floods, and heat waves.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
It's just amazing, everybody. It's just really stunning how many ways the Supreme Court has, decided to kill us. I can't even get over this last ruling. They just said that the EPA can't get involved in fighting climate change. Basically, I don't know how many ways they want to kill us. So far they're trying to kill us with assault rifles, wire hangers. Now they're going to add worldwide climate change. And how in the world does America lead on the issue of climate change? How do we, go to the Paris, climate summit, join the Paris Accords, and tell Europe, oh well, the American president has just been neutered by the Supreme Court in his ability to beat back greenhouse gas. It's an amazing thing. So we're going to have massive flooding on top of the threat from the guns and a justice system out of control. I'm telling you right now, your main jobs is to not get shot, don't get pregnant, and stay inside, everybody. Stay inside. It's like a syndicate of evil in some super evil, superhero movie. You know what I mean? It's like even SCOTUS, when they call it SCOTUS. It sounds like an acronym for an evil society, from some 50s comic book. We have to save the world from SCOTUS. SCOTUS. Syndicate for causing over-the-top ugly scenarios. By design, by choice. Anyway, I could explain it to you, the capturing of this court, and who captured it and why they want it. But I thought it would be best to let Sheldon Whitehouse explain it to you, since he is the master at unveiling and unraveling for us the scheme. So say hi, Sheldon.
Hi, I'm Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. Congress's failure on climate change is related to political dark money. And I hope you'll watch and share this less than 5-minute film. Every week the Senate is in session, I bring this increasingly beat up poster to the Senate floor to talk about climate change and the steady rise scientists are measuring in global temperatures. Year after year, the Earth sets new records for heat. Year after year, nature herself changes in response to the global warming we are measuring. Year after year, those changes spin off as floods and droughts, wildfires and rainbursts, species moving about or dying out, and oceans rising and acidifying. Yet, year after year, nothing happens in Congress. That's new. When I came to the Senate in 2007, there was lots of bipartisan action on climate change. Every one of these Republican senators was the co-sponsor of some kind of climate change legislation. But then came 2010. In January of 2010, heeding the appeals of big business interests, 5 Republican appointees on the Supreme Court decided, in a case called Citizens United, that those big special interests could spend unlimited amounts of money in politics. The fossil fuel industry sought this, anticipated it, and was quick to react. Virtually instantly, all Republican work on climate change stopped. The heartbeat of bipartisan work that preceded Citizens United flatlined. And the money poured in. Fossil fuel titans like the Koch brothers poured $750 million into the 2016 presidential elections and have promised to spend up to $400 million in the 2018 midterms. This Citizens United decision is at the heart of Congress's failure to act on climate change. It is a national disgrace. As big fossil fuel companies polluted our atmosphere and oceans, they propped up a battery of deceivingly named front groups to pollute our public debate about climate change. Climate denial, the original fake news. The web of denial organizations and dark money is large and complex. This diagram of it was created by an academic researcher, Professor Robert Bruhl at Drexel University. Other good research has been done at Oklahoma State University, Michigan State, Harvard, and Yale. Credit should also go to press outlets like Inside Climate News and best-selling authors who have shined spotlights into the web of climate denial and dark money. This all may seem like a lot of trouble and expense for the fossil fuel industry to go to, until you understand the stakes. The International Monetary Fund, very bright people with no apparent conflict of interest, put the subsidy to fossil fuel each year in the United States at $700 billion.
Oh my God.
Each year. To protect a prize like that, an industry can put up a lot of front groups and spend a lot of that Citizens United unlimited money. There are corporate good guys on climate, like these, that supported a strong Paris climate agreement. But they don't show up in Congress to lobby for climate action. In Congress, the political pressure from the fossil fuel industry has no corporate counterpressure. This guy cares. Pope Francis has eloquently called for climate action and climate justice. But in the Senate, this guy decides. And he holds his position because tens of millions of fossil fuel dollars have been spent to buy him his Republican Senate majority. So it will take more than my weekly speech to wake Congress up. We need you to get involved. Thanks for listening. You can make a difference.
Vote. Seriously.
He is the best.
Oh, listen, he has always known that the political donor class was purchasing everything. They were buying America. This video, you may have noticed, was from 2018. Do you know that there are 10 different parts to the scheme now? You can go to Sheldon Whitehouse's website and you can look at the videos. You can click on videos. You will see the scheme in 10 parts, where he looks at the Supreme Court and how they captured the court, where he talks about Citizens United and the flood of money that came, that stopped bipartisanship in this country, that happened about 12 years ago, okay? You can see the results now of their capturing of the courts, of their capturing of the Senate, of their capturing of the Republican Party, of their purchasing this entire party of people, okay, so that they can affect their kind of change, set one upon the other, make us unsafe, make us insecure, take away our right to vote. Oh, by the way, the Supreme Court said that next term they're going to review state legislatures' powers in federal elections. They're going to allow states to change the manner in which we select our electors.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Justice Thomas has sort of floated that out there about contraceptive rights, and contraception, and about same-sex marriages. But other justices have pushed back to say, no, he's really sort of on his own with that.
Well,
he believes that?
Well, he may be on his own, but he's signaling, as he often did. You know, I went to law school with him. Mm-hmm. He's been a person of grievance for as long as I've known him. Resentment, grievance, anger. And he has signaled in the past to lower courts, to state legislatures, to find cases, pass laws, get them up. I may not win the first, the second, or the third time, but we're going to keep at it.
So you're saying people pay attention to
this? The people he is speaking to, which are the, right-wing, very conservative judges and justices and state legislatures. And the thing that there's so many things about it that are deeply distressing, but women are going to die, Gail. Women will die.
I mean, this is just, the Supreme Court is literally sitting there planning and plotting a million ways to kill us all. It is unbelievable to me how maniacal they have become, because they're full of the same kind of grievance that their right-wing supporters, are full of too. It's so sick. Okay, so now the case that went up to them, because they're signaling to big law firms, they're signaling to state legislatures, they're signaling to Republican, fixers, people who want the fix to be in, people who want to write the laws themselves, like ALEC and the Koch brothers and all these organizations. And remember, Ginny Thomas, her claim to fame was the Tea Party. Okay, this was in the works for many, many, many years. Now they're finally situated in such a way that they're saying, okay, send us all your lunatic, fringy stuff. We know just how to, decide. We know just how to write it. We're ready. Send it up. And one of the things that they sent up was from North Carolina. This is radical. This is really, really radical. If you think, that overturning 50 years of precedents on, privacy rights, if you think overturning 100 years of precedents on gun rights, states' rights is earth-shattering and unnerving and disorienting. Wait till you hear this one. The next term of the Supreme Court, just ahead of the 2024 presidential elections, the Supreme Court is going to hear a case that will give state legislatures sole authority to set the rules for voting for federal elections, even if what they propose in the state legislatures violate state constitutions and result in extreme partisan gerrymandering of the maps. They are literally trying to strip state courts, this is the federal court, trying to strip state courts of their ability to oversee and rule and, make decisions in elections. Even though the state legislatures have already, by legislation, meaning state legislatures have passed, their House, their Senate, and their governors have signed legislation giving the courts in the states the right to review maps, the right to review election results, the right to look at fraud, the right to, decide whether there was a free and fair. They are going to hear this next term, which means next summer, next June, right around now, next year, we will have a decision on whether or not the state legislatures in 30 states where they have Republican legislatures, where the GOP controls both houses of the legislatures. That is a situation in 30 states in the United States of America. And they are going to strip the state courts of their judicial review. And they're going to insert themselves. The federal elections will now be, something that the state legislatures control without judicial review, without the states being able to review. What could go wrong? This is why we keep saying to things like 2022, this midterm now is setting the stage in your states. Who's your governor? Who's your state representative in the House? Who's your state senator? These are things you now, and so many people just won't even pay attention to who the federal senators are. They couldn't even name their two senators. Most Americans, I would wager, couldn't say who their House representative is or what district they vote in. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to have to say to Americans, you have to start paying attention to who's representing you in your state. You have to pay attention to not just the governor's race, but you have to pay attention to state senators' races, secretaries of state races, all of this. And the Supreme Court is sitting there with 6 people, 6 human beings who really hate democracy. They really hate it. They hate everything about the Constitution. They hate the First Amendment. They hate the wall between church and state. They hate that. They hate free and fair elections. They hate it. They hate our right to privacy, our ability to decide when we're going to start a family. They hate that we can use contraception. They love guns, they love babies, and they love God. But only their God. Not mine, not anybody else's, not any other interpretation, just theirs. And they are going to do everything and anything that they can to take away our ability to self-govern. Because I told you yesterday, I was reading Clarence's quotes to you from Ginny Thomas's lawyer. Now, the only reason why this led me to Clarence Thomas's quotes is because Ginny Thomas's lawyer, who told the January 6th committee that she's changed her mind. She doesn't want to testify. She doesn't want to talk to them. She doesn't want to go up there. She sees no need to actually go in and set the record straight as she said she wanted to. And so when I saw who the lawyer was, I looked him up. And when I looked him up, I found out he's the author of a new book about Clarence. This is so incestuous. It's unbelievable. So this is why incest is best for them, right? But anyway, he has this book coming out about Clarence, and he quotes Clarence. And you know what Clarence's grievance is? It's against you. It's against you. All of you. He says you spend so much time on your iPhone and so little time knowing the Constitution or who is in charge of you or who is your senator or who is your House member or who's your state secretary of state or who's your governor or who. He said he's basically saying you deserve to not have a democracy. You can't self-govern. In his best, decision, you can't self-govern, so he's going to have to do it for you. And he's going to choose, and you won't even know because it's like the boiling frog. But he's not willing to do it incrementally anymore. He wants to go full throttle, take it away from you, give it to your state legislature to pick who can vote, when you can vote, seriously, set rules for you to access your ballot, regardless of your constitution. So literacy tests, poll taxes, count the bubbles on the soap.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
The reason we had so many overreaching regulations in our nation is because the church complied. The church is supposed to direct the government.
What?
The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk that's not in the Constitution. It was in a stinking letter, and it means nothing like what they say it does.
Wow. Wow. The church directs the government. There is no separation between church and state. It's junk. The letter she's talking about was written by Thomas Jefferson in 1802. That said there is a wall between church and state. That's what she's talking about. You know, the founding fathers is who she's denigrating there because she wants the church, her particular brand of evangelical Christianity to dictate to the state what religion we will be. This is real white nationalist Christian crap. I mean, this is real... It's an avalanche of stupid, and it's an avalanche of a major destruction of this country, of what everything this country fought for and established itself to be. This is just literally saying it was an experiment that failed. We want a white Christian nationalist country instead. Wow. So, listen, I'm telling you that you've got, little psychos like that. She just won her primary in her little district in Colorado. What they were thinking, I have no earthly idea. But she is literally telling you what the future looks like in her world, in the minorities' world, the minority of, America. It's frightening. I mean, you can't, when you hear it like that, it literally takes your breath away because it has nothing to do with America. It has nothing to do with the United States. It has nothing to do with democracy. It has nothing to do with the Republic. It has nothing to do with the Constitution. It has nothing to do with anything that's familiar or known to us about being a citizen of this country. It literally has nothing to do with it. It's like deciding to join a cult or saying, you know what, screw it. I think the Amish were right. I'm going to, live a nice, quiet, humble Amish life. I'm going to have prearranged marriages. I'm going to, which you're free to do. But she doesn't want you to be free to do anything else. Her way or the highway. This is who the minority is. Here, I'll show you. Matt in Michigan.
Dude.
Go ahead, Matt.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I find it kind of funny how you push all these unfair narratives. It's her way or the highway. It seems like it's almost like reverse psychology. Like everything that you guys are saying about the...
What did she just say?
What do you mean, what did I just say?
No, what did she just say?
She was talking about how, the church should run the government, talking about...
Right, that's what she said. The church should run the government. That's what she said. So how am I presenting some false narrative?
Because you just said out of your face that she wants her way or the highway, and that's not what she said at all.
Let's listen to it together, okay? It's really short.
Okay.
The reason we had so many overreaching regulations in our nation is because the church complied. The church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk that's not in the Constitution. It was in a stinking letter, and it means nothing like what they say it does.
Okay.
So at what point did she say her way or the highway? Now, here's another thing.
She said the separation of church and state is junk. And that separation of church and state is not in the Constitution, and that the church should dictate to the government.
She never said her way or the highway.
What do you think she's saying to you?
She's not saying her way or the highway.
What is she saying?
She's referring to a Constitution. She's referring to some literature.
Separation of church and state is in the Constitution. Okay, you have the free expression, and you have the Establishment Clause in the Constitution. Would you like to tell me what the Establishment Clause says that she says doesn't exist? Would you like to tell me what it says?
You're misleading, and
you're misleading because I'm asking you, Mr. Constitutional Scholar.
Have everyone living in
Don't
suffering.
talk over me. Have a conversation if you can muster it. If you can
You
just.
don't want to have a conversation.
I do.
You want to use an ideology to force me to believe something when I never heard her say her way or the highway. You want me to agree with you that she implemented that.
I want you to tell me why it's okay for a member of Congress who takes an oath to uphold the Constitution, why it's okay for her to stand in a church, number one. Number two, campaign in a church and say that there is no separation of church and state in the Constitution.
Well, the same reason it's okay for any Democratic candidate to go to a church to rally up votes.
I want you to explain to me that it's junk, that there's a separation between church and state, which is what she's saying, and that the only reason why the church isn't. She said. Okay, forget it. You're an idiot.
Well, he wants to argue semantics and try to get a small W on that, and this is a microcosm of the conversation you have in the real world with this.
Well, look, she's standing in a church campaigning, okay? Actually, the pastor of that church actually asked for money for her, okay? We do have a Johnson Amendment that lets you go up to a certain line but not past it. She goes past it. And she says that the only reason why she can't go past it, the only reason why there's a Johnson Amendment, the only reason why there's a regulation that she can't fundraise in that church is because the church complies and that there is no separation of church and state. Now, she is a duly sworn member of Congress who says she will uphold the Constitution, whether she likes it or not. But she is literally in a church campaigning and saying that there is no separation of church and state, that the Establishment Clause, which clearly says that the government shall not establish any religion. And we have a test in this country called the Lemon Test. And the Lemon Test is from a 1971 or 71 case where Mr. Lemon actually sued to find out, like, what is the standard for establishing a religion? And they came up with a 3-part test, okay? And one of the things you cannot do is appear to endorse any religion as a government official, as a government. You think she knew? Oh, please. Alice in Oregon. Hello. No?
Yeah.
Okay. Catherine in Baltimore. Catherine in Baltimore. Okay. Nick in West Virginia.
Yeah, hello. I'd like to make 2 points today, if that's all right with you.
Well, sure.
Well, I think there's going to be more if this hearing in the House of Representatives, they do right. That lady, the Clarence Thompson's wife, was in that stuff up to her eyeballs, and I guarantee you, if they grab his phone and her phone, they've texted about it or did something. Those people can't stay off their phones today. And we could maybe get him out of the Supreme Court. There's one down. And the other 2 lied during the confirmation hearing, but I don't know if there's anything we can do about it. And I'm finally glad I heard somebody talking about the white churches, because everybody's just, I don't understand it myself. They play religion into everything when they're the most unholy people in the world.
They are.
And that's all I got to say.
Thank you. They are blasphemous. There's no question about it. I mean, when your slogan is God, guns, and babies, which is not babies, it's fetuses, okay? It's not babies. They hate babies. They won't take care of babies. They won't. You have 500,000 children in this country in foster care because there's not enough adoption going on. Oh, but we'll adopt all your fetuses. You know, this is such a lie. This is just for control. This is just to literally control people, especially white women. This is such an attack because 60% of the aborted fetuses are white babies. But as far as removing anybody from the Supreme Court, you need 67 senators. You need 67. That is not an option. It is not going to happen. And that's why they felt so emboldened to lie under oath. They did. You saw it. We documented it. I got them on tape. Lauren Boebert, is out there saying the church needs to dictate to the government. And you got morons out there that are playing games with words.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created
equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
America's better positioned to lead the world than we ever have been. We have the strongest economy in the world. Our inflation rates are lower than other nations in the world. The one thing that has been destabilizing is the outrageous behavior of the Supreme Court of the United States in overruling not only Roe v. Wade, but essentially challenging the right to privacy. We've been a leader in the world in terms of personal rights and privacy rights. And it is a mistake, in my view, for the Supreme Court to do what it did.
This is what the Supreme Court is doing, their way or the highway. That's what the GOP is about, my friend in Michigan. That is all that party is about, their way or the highway. What do I mean? Well, they just overturned 50 years of privacy rights, 50 years of if you don't like abortion, don't have one, but if you need one, go get one. They just took choice away from half the population, their way or the highway. They just took privacy away from everybody. Everybody. No one has a right to privacy anymore, according to the minority of this country. Their way or the highway. 100 years of states' rights. Even you, Michigan, states' rights. Took it away and said states don't have the ability to self-govern. They don't have any rights when it comes to concealed carry. Okay, you can't have states' rights when it comes to concealed carry, but you can prevent abortion, but you can't prevent a gun. Their way or the highway. It makes no sense. No sense at all. And what Lauren Boebert is standing there advocating for over and over and over again is a white supremacist, Christian nationalist view of America that is held by a minority of this country. And she will not stop until she gets her way. And Clarence wasn't going to stop till he got his way. She's actually lying. When she says there's no separation of church and state in the Constitution, it's a bunch of junk. She actually said the other day in church that if Jesus had an AK, that if Jesus had an AK-47, then he would not have been killed by his government. I mean, this is some weird, dark, dank interpretation of the Prince of Peace. Their way or the highway. Either you see Jesus as a war monger, as a guy with an AK. And you know what's really interesting is evangelicals in this country, they own almost all the weapons. It's crazy. I mean, I will say, 4 in 10 evangelicals own more than one weapon, okay? But 6 in 10 don't own any. So this is a very tiny sliver of a tiny sliver. Their way or the highway. Wake up and smell the authoritarianism and understand that you didn't say anything because you don't believe in global warming. You didn't say anything because you don't believe in Miranda rights. You didn't say anything because you don't think a woman should have the right to privacy in her own body. You didn't say anything because you didn't believe in this or you didn't believe in that. But when your rights are taken away, like your right to vote by the same 6 people, you'll understand that there's no one left to speak for you. Robin Mesa.
Hey, Randy.
Hi.
Hey, just wanted to say something about that earlier caller. That seems to be a conservative talking point or technique, is taking things literally word for word, and if it's not found anywhere in the Bible, or in the Constitution, they can't be real. And it's just, I'm just wondering how far back, and they're cherry picking. They want to cherry pick the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, because, the Constitution didn't have the Bill of Rights until after it was ratified by the 13 colonies, and then those were taken up after the president was elected and they assembled everything. And the thing about Clarence Thomas is he's cherry picking because at the rate he's going, he's going to have, 3/5 of a vote. His wife's going to be able to own him if he keeps this up. But he won't go that far, like you said earlier.
So here's what's really happening, just so everybody can understand, including that guy. What happens is big money goes, and big money is encouraged to create a case, okay? And they manufacture a case, and they literally go out and they find plaintiffs. They actually go out and find somebody, like in Citizens United, okay? And they keep on going and they keep on going. They try to get the lower court to lose and then the next level court to win so that there's a contretemps between the courts. And that's when they'll petition the Supreme Court to settle the dispute between the courts. They've gone so far that they don't even, the case with the voting rights thing that they're going to hear now, that isn't even disputed in any court. But this is what they do. The money goes out there and they find plaintiffs. They find cases like the next term you're going to hear, they found 2 web designers who don't want to create a website for same-sex marriages. Okay. And this is how they send the stuff up to the court, right? That's what's going on. It's paid for. It's all paid for. Everybody is being duped because they don't understand the government in which they toil. They don't understand the country that they live in.
Right. And I wish the party would get together and say, this is the one rule we're going to change as a party. Every candidate should be getting behind changing Citizens United by writing basically an amendment to the Constitution saying, a corporation is not a person. You can't give money. I'd like to see a law that just says the only registered voters can donate money of any kind. That would be self-promoting at the same time. One more thing about that earlier caller, though. He didn't really answer what she meant by what she said.
Because he doesn't know.
But what would his feelings be if she was wearing a hijab and was in front of inside a Muslim church? Would he be calling in defending her, or what would his reaction be?
Yeah, it's interesting.
I know they're very, very narrow-minded. It's their slice, their narrow interpretation of Christianity.
It's not just Christianity.
And it doesn't involve non-white people.
The entire Republican Party is about taking away choice. It's about taking away your ability to self-govern. It's about taking away your state's sovereignty. It's literally taking things away, rights away from you. And as long as he likes whose rights are being taken away, like women's rights, he's down with it. Or school kids' rights to be safe, he's down with it because he loves his gun or whatever. Or because she's in a church that he relates to, it's fine for her to say that there's no separation between church and state. But you're right. If she were a Muslim woman, okay, if she were Ilhan Omar saying that, his panties would be up in a bunch, okay? He would be so freaking heated and so just angry and terrified. But this is the problem with what the warning has always been. First, they came for, union workers, but I wasn't a union worker, so I said nothing. Then they came for, Jews, and I wasn't a Jew, so I said nothing. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. That's what's going on here. That is pure fascism.
And one last thing on the adoption thing with the red states, I know what they're going to say is we won't fund unwed mothers and all that, but we'll have groups that'll take your baby and sell them for you. And they'll make tens of thousands of dollars off of the baby industry. Then they'll shame the mother into say, well, you shouldn't get anything because that makes it look like you're selling your baby. I can just see that being all set up now because it's almost a game plan for them.
No, it's truly, they just don't care about what happens to the human lives once they're born. They don't care. They never did. Also, if everybody out there is groping around for when life starts biblically, it's right at the front of the book. You don't even have to do deep reading. It's in Genesis 2. So stop invoking the Bible as being what should dictate to the government, because in that case, life only begins when the first breath of life is blown into your nostrils there. It doesn't begin at conception. It doesn't begin with fertilization. It doesn't begin until breath.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
First and foremost thing we should do is make it clear how outrageous this decision was and how much it impacts not just on woman's right to choose, which is a critical piece, but on privacy generally. And so I'm going to be talking to the governors as to what actions they think I should be taking as well. And but the most important thing to be clear about is we have to change. I believe we have to codify Roe v. Wade in the law, and the way to do that is to make sure the Congress votes to do that. And if the filibuster gets in the way, it's like voting rights. It should be, we provide an exception for this, require an exception to the filibuster for this action to deal with the Supreme Court decision.
Yeah, and also voting rights. Anything constitutionally protected should not be up to Clarence Thomas or five of his friends. Okay, that is just a ridiculous scenario that you have six people in this country, six people deciding for 350 million people whether or not there's a separation between church and state, whether or not we have a right to live, whether or not we have a right to, decide when we're going to start our families. I mean, this is just crazy. Whether or not we have a right to privacy, whether or not we have a right to choose religion or no religion, or this religion or that religion, or to not be religiously, active, or to not even, like religion. I mean, that's freedom, right? They don't like freedom. They are so anti-freedom. These decisions that they've made in this particular term of the Supreme Court does more damage to American law, to American liberty, to American freedoms than anything I've seen in any session of the Supreme Court in its entirety. And we've had, disgusting, racist judges who, by the way, were mentioned in the decisions. Justice Taney is the author of the Dred Scott decision that said that Dred Scott wasn't entitled to a full life. He was 3/5 of a person. 3/5, not 5/5, not a whole person. He was only 3/5 of a person. Seriously. And they quoted Justice Taney in their decision to take away our privacy rights, our freedoms, by making him like some sort of a Supreme Court brilliant mind. That was sick, but that was a total nod to white supremacy by Clarence Thomas, no less. By Clarence Thomas. What is his deal? Well, I'm black and I know how you people are. What is that what he's about? This is very sick and twisted. But this whole GOP thing is very sick and twisted. Very. It protects the uber wealthy in our society. It protects people whose money make money for them, taxing those proceeds at a much lower rate than people who work really hard for a living. And then in order to sell that platform to ordinary Americans, they tell you you could be superior to women. We'll make it so that you have a group that you could be superior to. We'll make it so that you can feel superior to African Americans. We'll make it so you can feel superior to women. We'll make it so that if you can't exert your superiority by getting joy in being able to, stop a woman from doing something in her life, from owning property or from, banking or whatever it is, controlling her own life, we'll give you weapons. Because when the rapture comes, apparently it's going to take a lot of firepower. I don't know. It's very sick and twisted. But it's the culture wars. They sell you the culture wars so that they can keep billionaires, to keep the donor money coming, to keep and the donors want the subsidies, which you're paying them. You're paying them. $700 billion you're paying to the gougers right now. The oil and gas industry in America, which isn't an American industry at all. It's not American. Okay, there may be American jobs, yes. But the companies, British Petroleum is British. Royal Dutch Shell is not an American company, okay? Venezuelan oil companies are not American companies. There may be jobs associated with them here. That's fine. Set that aside. We're literally subsidizing them $700 billion a year. And then on the back end, they're gouging you at the pump because the time is right. Because Russia took, some of their oils off the market. So they're going to gouge you now. Democrats tried to pass an anti-gouging law, and every Republican voted against it. So every time a guy like that in Michigan bitches and moans about how much it cost him to fill up his tank, I want him to remember that Democrats tried to stop the gouging at the pump, and every single Republican voted against stopping it. It's such a merry-go-round. They have guys like him on, and they're so disoriented that they just don't understand that the culture wars are not going to put a nickel in your pocket. The culture wars aren't going to help you pay your rent. Hating somebody isn't going to get you very far in a capitalist society. But that's what they're placating you with while they steal from you. Churches don't pay taxes, and yet they want to dictate to the government. And you think that's fine for her to do what she did as a sworn constitutional officer, which is what a Congress member is. Okay. Angela in New York.
Hi, Randy. First of all, I really admire you. I watch you sometimes to get strength from you, because things are extremely distressing at this time. I have 2 young daughters, and I'm terrified. I had my entire life, I've had the choice. I've had choice. I've never had to live without it, and now they don't. What worries me the most is that I hear what you're saying, divide and conquer. I know it's about, at the end of the day, it's about money. I know it's about just, the billionaire class. I know all of that. But what I'm hearing from a lot of people when I talk to them is ignorance. They're buying the rhetoric. They're buying what the GOP is selling them. And a lot of the things that they're saying are extremely violent and wanting to win at any cost. And it's frightening. And what I hear in response from a lot of people who are, on the left, who are liberals, who are Democrats, is vote, vote, vote. Do we actually believe that voting is going to be enough, especially since they're passing laws? We have a Supreme Court that's passing laws that's going to restrict voting, that's going to gerrymander, that's going to make it impossible for us to even have a fair election.
But we do have a fair election, this election.
Yeah.
So vote like your life depends on it, because it does. America depends on it. Democracy itself depends on it. Because after that, if people don't show up, or if they say voting, it doesn't sound strong, it's very strong. It's a lot of power.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
This is Lauren Boebert from the same church, okay? Fundraising. Now, first of all, I want you to see what's on your screen, okay? Can you see on the upper right-hand portion of your screen that church is nearly empty on that side of the, okay? There's a smattering of people. This is a sliver of a minority, okay? But she's standing in this church with Pastor Womack fundraising.
All right, I heard this from Richard, and I just asked her. And we aren't able to give her an honorarium. So I asked Lauren if we were able to give her an honorarium, and she said no, and Richard had already told me that. But I've already read, Jamie and I have contributed to her reelection.
Yes, thank you.
And I've read that they've got some heavy hitters coming in. A lot of the Democrats are pouring a tremendous amount of money into trying to silence this woman. And so what I'd like to ask you to do, how could they contribute if they want to be a part of your deal?
LaurenForFreedom.com.
All right, so Lauren for Freedom.
That's what this is all about, freedom.
Oh my God, they're literally fundraising in the church, literally doing it, giving out her website address. They wanted to pay her. She said she couldn't. And that's when she started saying, well, the only reason why is because of the regulations, and that's because there's no separation between churches. It's all junk anyway. It's all junk. And the church needs to be able to dictate to the government. This is a theocracy in the making. She is not about freedom. She's about taking away freedom. She's about taking away choice. She's about taking away states' rights. She's about taking away freedom of or from religion. That ain't freedom. That's her way of interpreting freedom for herself, not you. Freedom for herself to raise money like evangelical Christian televangelists do. They're trying to silence her. You know, running against somebody and debating the issues and holding yourself out for the voters to decide is not silencing someone. It's the exact opposite. It's inviting someone to debate the issues. That's what it is. They put millions, if not billions of dollars up every single time to pick Congress members, to pick senators, and now to pick Supreme Court justices. But if the other side of the aisle wants to meet you there in the fundraising game, well, we're trying to silence you. How does that work in your head? That's crazy. That's really nuts. And listen, I want to tell you something. All the money that she's trying to raise there, all of it is to get people to vote for her. So if all this money goes to a candidate so that you will vote for them, how can you then say that the vote doesn't matter? How can you say that's not the be-all, end-all? How can you say that that's not pure power? How can you say that rhetoric somehow is more valuable than your vote? There are more of us than there are of people like her. There are more people that don't want a theocracy than do. There are more people who want freedom of choice than don't. There are more people who want to remain private in their person, papers, and things than don't. There are more people who are, not looking to have a national religion than are. And yet those people don't vote. And all this money, all of it, is to put ads on the TV to get you to vote. But you don't think the vote is the answer. Of course it is. It's pure power. It's the power that is the great equalizer. On election day, you have the exact same amount of power as the Koch brothers do. You have the exact same amount of power as the Heritage Foundation does. You have the exact same amount of power as Leo Leonard does. You have the exact same amount of power as Carrie Severino does. Who are these people? They're the ones who are literally picking the Supreme Court justices. They're the ones who organize millions and millions and millions of dollars from a handful of like-minded billionaires who see the value in the culture wars because then they can continue to not pay for anything they do. For anything they do. They want to dump on your property. They want to pollute on your property. They want to sully your clean streams. They want to, mess up your water. They want to take your water and use it for their purposes, for fracking or whatever they're interested in using your water for. It just takes money. But on election day, you're equal. And there are so many more of us than there are them. There are so many more people in this country that are much more interested in equal protection under law than aren't. There are so many more people in this country that are interested in having their children be able to go outside and take a breath of clean air 10 years from now. There are so many people in this country that are facing drought right now and understand what's going on with, the misuse and the misappropriation of water. There are people who are poisoned by their water. There are people who need the courts to side with them having a clean source of water. There are people in this country who are interested in health care. There are people in this country who are interested in voting. There are people in this country who are interested in all these things. And there are so many more of us than there are of them. All the times that America has made great strides, great progress, is because we had supermajorities of Democrats. LBJ's time, supermajorities. How do you think the Civil Rights Act of 1965 got passed? How do you think the Voting Rights Act got passed? And what do the Republicans do the second they have a majority? The second they gut the Voting Rights Act. They go right after it. Why? If voting isn't everything, why do they go after it? Because it is everything. And so the rhetoric is, well, there has to be something more than asking us to vote. There has to be something more. Build a supermajority. Election by election, just like they did. Build one. Create one. Make it safe for your children. Make it possible that my child will have the same amount of rights that I had, not less. By voting. Well, it just doesn't seem like enough. It's plenty for right now. Once we have a majority, a supermajority, once we have at least 2 more senators who will vote to roll back the filibuster on constitutionally protected rights to privacy, to not establishing of religion, to the free exercise of religion, all those things balanced one against the other so that no one gets priority. No one. People who want to establish religion don't get priority, and people who want to practice religion don't get priority. You have to balance it in a free and fair democracy. And the only people that are interested in balance or finding the middle ground or finding the balance between those two clauses, it ain't Republicans. There's a little clue for you right there. It's not them.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I don't know why this guy's not in jail, but he's not. And he actually said this.
Trump is set to announce his run for 2024 on Monday, which is a very special day. We're shooting this right now during a break during my live show on June 29th, Wednesday edition. That means in 5 days, on July 4th, President Trump is going to announce he's running for his second term. Imagine the explosive political, cultural, economic, medical, financial implications of that. Roger Stone is a close confidant of Trump. He confirmed that the first 6 months of last year, Trump wasn't going to run. They messed with him so bad, they ran America on the ground so bad, he said, okay, I'm going to run. And the question became, when will he run? It became, when will he make that decision? Right now, he is planning to announce, this is exclusive, this next Monday, July 4th, that he's running for president again.
Oh, Jesus. I hope he's just delusional, because if that happens, this divided, torn asunder country is going to literally come to blows, one against the other. Because that guy is a thug. That guy is a criminal. That guy literally incited a riot. That guy committed seditious conspiracy. That guy committed sedition. Donald Trump is the only president that ever committed sedition and conspired with others to commit sedition, to literally overthrow the free and fair election, to literally, undo what the majority. He's a criminal. He is. I just can't imagine like what it would look like if he announced while we were on July 4th, like while everybody was eating hot dogs and waving the flag, and then all of a sudden you had this autocrat, this freaking, selfish, psychopathic, sociopathic. I don't even know what to call him. I mean, the guy knew everybody was armed. He knew it, and said, and now we're going to walk to the Capitol. He knew that the target was the Capitol itself because Capitol Police had sent a letter on January 4th, not just saying there was a potential for violence, but that they planned to be at war and the target was Congress itself. The target was Congress itself. And what does he do? He told, and we're going to walk down to the, I mean, it's unbelievable how people are so willing to trash this country. They're just so willing to go there. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? Catherine in Baltimore.
Hi, Randi. Fabulous show today.
Oh, thanks.
I wanted, starting out, I was going to ask if Joan Roberts was really concerned about 75% of Americans don't have any faith in the legitimacy of the court. If he wanted to do something about it, would he be able to put the same restrictions or guidelines on the Supreme Court members that every other judge in the country has about conflict of interest and recusal and all that?
Yeah.
And my other...
I mean, he couldn't... I don't think he could do it just, unilaterally, but I think that,
But the Congress does, right? The Congress has the power?
Yes.
To make regulations?
Yes.
So anybody out there who doesn't realize that this could be their last chance to vote, that doesn't vote for more Democrats to the Senate, this may be the last time you have the right to vote and have your vote counted. And like you said, these state
legislatures.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
they can. That democracy, forget it. You know, you don't have a right to say anything, and I mean, it's just crazy. And then
think about this as bizarre as people are saying. You sound crazy. There's something. Yeah, you know what Texas did? Texas passed a vigilante law saying that neighbors can turn in neighbors. That is so fascist. I've never seen anything like that written down on paper and passed by any American legislature, and yet it happened. And yet it did. And now today, I don't know how many people read the paper, but today the Republican Party wants to restrict interstate travel for women. They literally want laws that prevent you and me from going from state to state if they suspect that we're going for abortions.
Despite the fact that all of our rights to privacy are in the Ninth Amendment and many other amendments, but there is some red state legislature, I can't remember the state, where they're actually proposing a law that any woman who shows up at an airport or a train station or bus depot has to provide proof of that she's not pregnant, a pregnancy test, or submit or force them to give a urine sample to them to do a pregnancy test, or they can't travel out of state. I mean, this is this is fascism. This is 1930s Germany. And then Lauren Boebert, you know what? When you elect a high school dropout who has never read the document that she took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend, this is what you get. So I don't know how stupid the people in Colorado are, but there must be a hell of a lot of them in her little district, or it's a little district, or the gerrymandering is out of control.
Well, listen, she won her primary, which is Republicans voting, but she didn't win the election. I just, you got to keep your fingers crossed that people, even in, that part of Colorado, have the sense that God gave them and understand what she's, proposing is very, very un-American. It's super fascist. Exactly. It's not anything that Coloradans of any, any sort of persuasion should be for, and I just don't find that that's the Western spirit, is to say, this is we want just her version of evangelical Christianity to be the state law, or to be the federal law, or to be the law of America. I mean, it's just so sick.
And if she was Muslim, how many people would be out of their friggin' mind?
I know.
I know.
And I just but listen, they've got this crop of really sick people. You got, like, in Pennsylvania, which is a nice swing state, okay, you got a far-right conspiracy theorist, this Doug Mastriano guy, who's running for governor there. Trust me, that guy who is like an uber white nationalist Christian, QAnon supporting, a far-right conspiracy theorist, that guy will undo abortion in a fairly blue state in the heartbeat. In the heartbeat.
And voting rights, too.
Yeah, voting rights, too.
He said the same thing.
I know.
And I just want to say one more thing, if I have a second.
Yeah, go. Oh, I didn't do that. You did that.
I can attest. You did not do that. That was not you.
I was itching a little bite I just got, is what I was doing. I didn't touch the phone. All right. Joe on Long Island.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
I was going to talk about the Second Amendment, but this is more important, that every Democrat go out there and vote.
Not just Democrats, Republicans.
No excuse this time.
Moderate Republicans need to wake up too, because the truth is that they believe in America. They may disagree on taxes. They may disagree on energy sources or whatever, but they don't want to see a fascist country. This is it. This is it. I swear to God, this is it. This is your last
This November
chance.
Is it.
It's it. It is it.
Now, I wonder how many women that voted for Trump and lost their rights to their own bodies would do that again.
I don't think suburban women are up for any of this. I just don't. I don't think that, I think they left him a long time ago, suburban women. I really do. I think that's why he lost the last election, which he did. And he lost by 8 million votes. And I promise you that the reason he lost 8 million votes is because women couldn't explain him to their children. And now those same women are like, oh my God, my right to privacy, really? That was up for grabs? I had no earthly idea. He really did know that there were weapons there. There really were AKs there. He really did want Mike Pence dead. Listen, moderate Republicans are not about that. They are not about the violence. They are not about taking away the right to privacy. They are not about not fighting climate change. They understand that it's, drought time and it's flood time. They get it. It just, he was entertaining for a small while. He appealed to a lot of people's resentment and hatred. Women are not going there again.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Mary had a little man.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Ms. Hutchinson, do you remember Mr. Giuliani meeting with Mr. Meadows on January 2nd, 2021?
I do. He met with Mr. Meadows in the evening of January 2nd, 2021.
And we understand that you walked Mr. Giuliani out of the White House that night, and he talked to you about January 6th. What do you remember him saying?
As Mr. Giuliani and I were walking to his vehicles that evening, he looked at me and said something to the effect of, Cass, are you excited for the 6th? It's going to be a great day. I remember looking at him saying, Rudy, could you explain what's happening on the 6th? He had responded something to the effect of, we're going to the Capitol. It's going to be great. The president's going to be there. He's going to look powerful. He's going to be with the members. He's going to be with the senators. Talk to the chief about it. Talk to the chief about it. He knows about it.
And did you go back then up to the West Wing and tell Mr. Meadows about your conversation with Mr. Giuliani?
I did. After Mr. Giuliani had left the campus that evening, I went back up to our office and I found Mr. Meadows in his office on the couch. He was scrolling through his phone. I remember leaning against the doorway and saying, I had an interesting conversation with Rudy, Mark. It sounds like we're going to go to the Capitol. He didn't look up from his phone and said something to the effect of, there's a lot going on, Cass, but I don't know. Things might get real, real bad on January 6th.
Oh, my God. This was blockbuster testimony. It was everything that they said that it would be, the January 6th committee, that is. This was Cassidy Hutchinson, who is a White House aide. She worked in the West Wing for Mark Meadows. She had been a legislative assistant in the West Wing prior. And then when Mark Meadows became the chief of staff, she went to work for him. And so because Mark Meadows was the chief of staff to the president of the United States, she was able to hear and see everything around the president of the United States before, during, and after January 6th. She is a devout Republican. Again, not one Democrat has testified in these hearings, not one. Every single person who was a witness, every single person who decided to give testimony, every single person who got sworn and didn't take the fifth, like Michael Flynn took the fifth and Eastman took the fifth 100 times. Jeffrey Clark took the fifth. All these people took the fifth because they understand that they were part of a gigantic racketeering, influence, corrupt organization, that they broke laws, many federal laws. All of the laws that they broke are in the federal code, USC Section 18. That is the criminal code. Well, Cassidy Hutchinson obviously was very lucky. I'm sure she considered herself extremely lucky to be in the White House at a very young age, to be the aide to the chief of staff of the president of the United States. I'll bet you every day she went to work in the West Wing, she said, wow, I can't, wow, this is like being in a Frank Capra movie. Frank Capra, great director, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Exactly. And yet she had to, because her love of this country, her patriotism demanded of her that she'd tell us what kind of crazy that was, how violent it was, how threatening an environment it was, how everybody understood what January 6th was going to be way before January 6th. In fact, I'll bet you anything that when this committee hears all the testimony from everybody and we're all finished and done with the storytelling of how this happened, we're going to find out that this was all planned in advance, and I mean way in advance, like in September, just in case Trump lost. And I'll bet you that this was the plan that Trump was going to execute on if he had lost to Hillary. And that is why he kept saying during the run-up to the first election in 2016, he'll let us know what happens if he loses. But he kept saying the election would be rigged in 2016. Rigged, right? Kept on planting that seed like a little Johnny Appleseed, planting the seed, and then he won. And we were all sitting there going, well, I thought it was rigged. He said it was rigged, but now that he won, it's not rigged, and he never mentioned it again until the lead up to 2020. And then it started all over again. The accusations, pointing the finger, it's rigged, just in case he lost. And he did. And we're going to find out that this plan was the plan in 2016 that was rehatched and relaunched in 2020 in September. Ahead of the election. But today, we heard about the dates of January 2nd through January 7th, 5 days in the White House. And it was hair-raising. It was mind-blowing. What we learned today was pretty basic stuff. What we learned today was exactly, what we thought happened, but didn't really know the order of things or who knew what, and did the president understand? And we also learned that those protesters, the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, the people that showed up with tactical gear and helmets and walkie-talkies and all of that, they were armed. They were armed with everything. Pistols and AKs and ARs. They had everything. And the only thing that kept them from going to the ellipse, kept them from going to the Stop the Steal rally, was magnetometers. And that the magnetometers were catching people the night before, trying to bring weapons into the January 6th, what they called the arena, the ellipse. And Donald Trump was briefed on this. Donald Trump knew that they were armed. He understood that they had brought weapons. He understood that they were wearing helmets and tactical gear, that they had bear spray and flagpoles and guns. He understood all of it. He was briefed. He was briefed by the Secret Service. The guy who sat across the hall from Mark Meadows and Cassidy Hutchinson. The guy whose office it was directly across the hall was in charge of the president's protection and the protection of anybody who fell under Secret Service protection. He briefed the president. He told the president. He told him on January 6th that there would be violence and that the night before there had been arrests for weapons and ammo, and that the people who came had pepper spray and firearms and ARs and Glocks and all kinds of weapons and ammunition. And the president didn't care. He knew that they were armed. And backstage at the Stop the Steal rally, he was upset because the magnetometers were catching armed people. And the rally itself was not well attended because of the magnetometers and the amount of weapons that were being brought into the ellipse. And Donald Trump said, because the weapons, because they have weapons, they're not being allowed in, get rid of the magnetometers. Get rid of those. Let them in. They're not here to hurt me. And then we'll march to the Capitol. So he wanted them armed when they marched to the Capitol. Before January 6th, the night before, when people were being arrested with weapons and he was briefed, before that even, on January 4th, the Capitol Police sent out a warning that said that the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers had planned to be in Washington for January 6th, and that they had learned that the target of their ire, the target of their violence, was not going to be counter-protesters at all. It wasn't going to be Antifa or any of your imaginary enemies of the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers, but the target was the Capitol itself. That is what was written down in a memo authored by the Capitol Police, that they planned to be in Washington and Congress itself was the target. Donald Trump knew this. He knew that they were going to attack the Capitol. He knew that they were going to attack the Capitol with weapons. He knew that they were going to attack the Capitol with violence. And he wanted that to happen. He was down with that.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Now we're going to turn to certain information that was available before January 4th and what the Trump administration and the president knew about the potential for violence before January 6th. On the screen, you will see an email received by Acting Deputy Attorney General Donahue on January 4th from the National Security Division of the Department of Justice. Mr. Donahue testified in our hearings last week. The email identifies apparent planning by those coming to Washington on January 6th to, quote, occupy federal buildings and discussions of, quote, invading the Capitol building. Here's what Mr. Donahue said to us.
And we knew that if you have tens of thousands of very upset people showing up in Washington, D.C., that there was potential for violence.
The U.S. Secret Service was looking at similar information and watching the planned demonstrations. In fact, their intelligence division sent several emails to White House personnel, like Deputy Chief of Staff Tony Ornato and the head of the President's Protective Detail, Robert Engel, including certain materials listing events like those on the screen. The White House continued to receive updates about planned demonstrations, including information regarding the Proud Boys organizing and planning to attend events on January 6th. Although Ms. Hutchinson has no detailed knowledge of any planning involving the Proud Boys for January 6th, she did note this.
I recall hearing the word Oath Keeper and hearing the word Proud Boys closer to the planning of the January 6th rally when Mr. Giuliani would be around.
On January 3rd, the Capitol Police issued a special event assessment. In that document, the Capitol Police noted that the Proud Boys and other groups planned to be in Washington, D.C. on January 6th and indicated that, quote, unlike previous post-election protests, the targets of the pro-Trump supporters are not necessarily the counter-protesters as they were previously, but rather Congress itself is the target on the 6th.
So the White House, the Secret Service, the head guy of the President's Secret Service detail, Robert Engel, and the man across the hall, Tony Ornato, who's in charge of all Secret Service protectees, they all know that the Capitol is the target for January 6th, ahead of January 6th. And so Mark Meadows knew, the Secret Service guy, Tony Ornato knew, the head of the President's Secret Service detail, Robert Engel knew, Cassidy Hutchinson knew, Mark Meadows knew. Everybody in the West Wing knew what the target for the Oath Keepers, knew what the target for the Proud Boys, knew what the stand back and stand by, standing by, sir, right? Knew exactly what the target was. This is devastating because the president was also briefed.
Ms. Hutchinson, here's a clip of your testimony regarding Mr. Meadows' response to learning that the rally attendees were armed that day. What was Mark's reaction, Mr. Meadows' reaction to this list of weapons that people had in the crowd?
When Tony and I went in to talk to Mark that morning, Mark was sitting on his couch and on his phone, which was something typical. And I remember Tony just got right into it. I was like, sorry, I just want to let you know, and informed him, like, this is how many people we have outside the mags right now. These are the weapons that we're known to have. It's possible he listed more weapons off that I just don't recall. And gave him a brief but and concise explanation, but also fairly thorough. And I remember distinctly Mark not looking up from his phone. And I remember Tony finishing his explanation and it taking a few seconds for Mark to say something to the point where I almost said, "Mark, did you hear him?" And then Mark chimed in and was like, "All right, anything else?" Still looking down at his phone. And Tony looked at me and I looked at Tony and Tony said, "No, sir, do you have any questions?" He's like, "What are you hearing?" And then I looked at Tony and I was like, "Sir, he just told you about what was happening down at the rallies." And he was like, yeah, I know. And then he looked up and said, "Have you talked to the president?" And Tony said, "Yes, sir, he's aware too." He said, "All right, good."
He asked Tony if Tony had informed the president.
Yes.
And Tony said, yes, he had.
So the president knew there were weapons at this rally. The president understood exactly what was going on January 6th, and he was good with it. He was absolutely fine with it. The Capitol Police were on the radio the night before, and they were on the radio on the morning of, saying that there were people in the trees with weapons, with "Don't Tread on Me" flags, that were carrying ARs and Glocks and all kinds of guns.
There's an individual who's in a tree. He's going to be a white male, about 6 feet tall, thin build, brown cowboy boots. He's got blue jeans and a blue jean jacket, and underneath the blue jean jacket, the complainant's both saw stock with AR-15. He's going to be with a group of individuals, about five to eight other individuals. Two of the individuals in that group at the base of the tree, near the porta potties, were wearing green fatigues, green olive drab style fatigues, about 5'8", 5'9", skinny white males, brown cowboy boots. They had Glock style pistols in their waistband.
8736 with the message that subject, weapon on his right hip. After that, he's in the tree.
Motor 1, make sure PPD knows they have an elevated threat in the tree south side of Constitution Avenue. Look for the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, American flag face mask, cowboy boots, weapon on the right side hip.
I got 3 men walking down the street in fatigue while carrying AR-15.
I just want to give a shout out to Wisconsin because your Senator Ron Johnson said no one was armed. He said it over and over again. Yeah, everybody was armed. In fact, Donald Trump, when he was backstage at the Stop the Steal rally before his big speech, not only did he know that the people that were there were armed, but he also knew that the magnetometers were stopping people who were armed from coming to the rally. And so he told the Secret Service to get rid, not of the weapons, not of the people with weapons, get rid of the magnetometers. Get rid of them. Because they're not here to hurt me. He knew that the Capitol was the target. He was briefed. Everybody knew that the Capitol was the target. Rudy Giuliani knew. Mo Brooks knew. Everybody that attended the Stop the Steal rally, the President of the United States at the time knew. They all knew. And the advice and the request from the President of the United States wasn't, hey, make sure people who are armed don't come near the Capitol. We know it's going to be no, he said get rid of the magnetometers. He was upset because the shot didn't look good, because the rally wasn't full. It wasn't well attended. And when he heard that the people who wanted to attend were the people with Glocks and ARs and all kinds of weapons, and that they were being stopped by security because they had weapons, he wanted them to stop screening people for weapons because he wanted it to look full. And it wasn't. That's your president. That was our president. Our president.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
I recall Tony and I having a conversation with Mark probably around 10 a.m., 10:15 a.m., where I remember Tony mentioning knives, guns in the form of pistols and rifles, bear spray, body armor, spears, and flagpoles. Spears were one item, flagpoles were one item, and then Tony had relayed to me something to the effect of, and these effing people are fastening spears onto the ends of flagpoles.
Tony, in that particular clip, is Tony Ornato, who is in charge of all Secret Service protectees, and his office is directly across the hall from hers and Mark Meadows' offices, okay? And he's telling the president they're fastening spears to flagpoles. They got bear spray, they got knives, they got guns, they got everything. They got everything. And the president, they're not here to hurt me. Let them in.
When we were in the offstage announce area tent behind the stage, he was very concerned about the shot, meaning the photograph that we would get, because the rally space wasn't full. One of the reasons, which I've previously stated, was because he wanted it to be full and for people to not feel excluded because they'd come far to watch him at the rally. And he felt the mags were at fault for not letting everybody in. But another leading reason, and likely the primary reason, is because he wanted it full, and he was angry that we weren't letting people through the mags with weapons, what the Secret Service deems as weapons and our weapons. But when we were in the offstage announce tent, I was part of a conversation. I was in the vicinity of a conversation where I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in.
So the president knew that the target was the Capitol. The president knew that people had weapons. He knew that they had ARs. He knew that they had AKs. He knew that they had Glocks. He knew that they had bear spray, that they had spears and flagpoles, and that they were attaching spears to the ends of flagpoles. He knew everything. He also knew that the mags, the magnetometers, were preventing those people from entering the event space. And he was concerned that it wouldn't look good on the TV. And he said, get rid of the magnetometers. I don't care. They're not here to hurt me. And then, once the people with the weapons are allowed to come to see my speech, we can walk to the Capitol with weapons, knowing that was the target, knowing it.
Just to be clear, Ms. Hutchinson, is it your understanding that the president wanted to take the mags away and said that the armed individuals were not there to hurt him?
That's a fair assessment.
The issue wasn't with the amount of space available in the official rally area only, but instead that people did not want to have to go through the mags. Let's listen to a portion of what you told us about that.
In this particular instance, it wasn't the capacity of our space, it was the mags and the people that didn't want to come through. And that's what Tony had been trying to relay to him that morning. It's not the issues that we encountered on the campaign. We have enough space, or they don't want to come in right now. They have weapons that they don't want confiscated by the Secret Service, and they're fine on the mall. They can see you on the mall, and they want to march straight to the Capitol from the mall.
Oh my God.
The president apparently wanted all attendees inside the official rally space and repeatedly said, quote, "They're not here to hurt me." And just to be clear, so he was told again in that conversation, or was he told again in that conversation, that people couldn't come through the mags because they had weapons?
Correct.
And that people, his response was to say they can march to the Capitol from the ellipse.
Something to the effect of, take the effing mags away. They're not here to hurt me. Let them in. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol after the rally's over. They can march from the ellipse. Take the effing mags away. Then they can march to the Capitol.
So the people with weapons didn't want to surrender their weapons to the Secret Service, who would screen them for weapons with magnetometers, and instead sent a message that they would walk to the Capitol from the mall. They didn't have to go to the ellipse. okay? And they couldn't and wouldn't go to the ellipse because they would be screened for weapons by the Secret Service, who had magnetometers, and instead said, look, we'll go to the Capitol, but we'll just leave from the mall, not the ellipse. We can't get there because we're not surrendering our weapons. And the president said, get rid of the effing mags, let my people in. They're not here to hurt me, and then we can march to the Capitol. And the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and all the armed don't tread on me people and the crazies out there, they were like, no, it's okay. It's okay. We don't have to go to the speech. We'll just stay on the mall and we'll go straight to the Capitol. And Trump didn't like that idea because it wouldn't give him a good TV picture. It wouldn't look like his speech was filled. And so he told the Secret Service, let them in with their weapons. They're not here to hurt me. And then they can march with me to the Capitol armed. It's hard to believe that this was worse than we thought it was, but it is worse than we thought it was. It's a lot worse than we thought it was. Okay, so now the speech is over and the armed, I don't know what to call them, terrorists, protesters. They're not protesters. They're there to destroy the Capitol. They're there to kill people. They're there with weapons to hang Mike Pence, to kill Nancy Pelosi. They're there to hurt people, if not kill them. And Trump knows this. And the Secret Service says to him after his speech, you're not going to the Capitol. And just in case anybody was believing the lie that Trump told us that he was never going to walk to the Capitol, that it was metaphoric, it was a metaphor for, and I'll be there with you. Remember that? I mean, I played it 2,000 times because we knew he wanted to go. Couldn't prove it until today. And now we know exactly what happened. So the Secret Service detail actually said to him, I'm sorry, but you can't go to the Capitol. There's armed insurrectionists. There's people there, seditionists there, that are going to overthrow the government based on you telling them to. And you're still the president of the United States, and we're still the Secret Service, and we can't let you go there. So they bring him to his limousine called the Beast. And they put him in there and they tell him, you're not going to the Capitol. We have to bring you back to the West Wing. And he doesn't want to go back to the West Wing. He wants to go to the Capitol and watch the bloodshed. He wants to go to the Capitol and witness the carnage. He wants to lead them into their freaking war against the United States. He wants to charge ahead of them.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, so after his big speech, which was poorly attended because people were being screened out for having weapons, guns and ammo, the president wants to then go to the Capitol. He wants to watch the carnage. He wants to watch the bloodshed. The Secret Service, the head of his Secret Service detail is a guy named Robert Engel. That is the head of the president's personal Secret Service detail. Robert Engel tells him, you're not going to the Capitol. We have to take you back to the West Wing, and brings him back to the West Wing. When Robert Engel goes back to the West Wing, Cassidy Hutchinson is there. And Robert Engel starts to relay the story of what happened in the car, the Beast, on the way back from the president's speech to the West Wing, even though because the president did not want to go back to the West Wing. He wanted to watch the bloodshed.
When you returned to the White House in the motorcade after the president's speech, where did you go?
When I returned to the White House, I walked upstairs towards the Chief of Staff's office, and I noticed Mr. Ornato lingering outside of the office. And once we had made eye contact, he quickly waved me to go into his office, which was just across the hall from mine. When I went in, he shut the door, and I noticed Bobby Engel, who is the head of Mr. Trump's security detail, sitting in a chair, just looking somewhat discombobulated and a little lost. And I looked at Tony, and he had said, "Did you effing hear what happened in the Beast?" I said, "No, Tony, I just got back. What happened?" Tony proceeded to tell me that when the president got in the Beast, he was under the impression from Mr. Meadows that the off-the-record movement to the Capitol was still possible and likely to happen, but that Bobby had more information. So once the president had gotten into the vehicle with Bobby, he thought that they were going up to the Capitol, and when Bobby had relayed to him, "We're not, we don't have the assets to do it, it's not secure, we're going back to the West Wing," the president had a very angry response to that. Tony described him as being irate. The president said something to the effect of, "I'm the effing president, take me up to the Capitol now." To which Bobby responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing." The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Renato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
The president of the United States of America tried to strangle his own secret security detail. The president of the United States wanted to see the carnage so badly. He knew that the Capitol was the target. He knew these people were armed. He was briefed on all of this, okay? He understood why his rally was so poorly attended. It was because the people with weapons were being screened out. And he said, "Just let them in. They're not here to hurt me. They're not here to hurt me. And then we can march to the Capitol." He said, No. Don't worry, Mr. President. We don't want our weapons confiscated by the Secret Service. We'll go to the Capitol, but we'll go from the mall. Okay, so he was already pissed because it wasn't a good shot of the speech that he was about to give. And he wanted to go to the Capitol to witness the bullets flying. And the Secret Service wouldn't let him, and he grabbed the steering wheel of the car. The Secret Service officer in charge of the president's detail said, "Sir, you have to let go of the steering wheel." And Trump lunges for his own Secret Service agent's neck to strangle his own Secret Service agent. Great. 25th Amendment, anybody? 25th? I just... this story just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Dean in LA.
Randy.
Yes.
Oh, Captain, my captain.
Huh.
Hey, boiling to death out here in LA, but it's sounding pretty awful back in D.C. Yeah, speaking of the 25th Amendment, I was actually hoping they would have gotten to that issue, because I still am up in the air on when did anybody in the the cabinet start saying maybe we should invoke the 25th Amendment here.
Oh, January 7th.
On January 7th they were?
Yeah.
But because I'd always been under the impression that they literally were talking about it that afternoon on January 6th.
No, on the 7th, the deputy counsel, the White House deputy counsel, the counsel was Pat Cipollone, and the deputy counsel was a guy named Pat Philbin. And Pat Philbin on January 7th told the president, either you're going to give a speech to the country and you're going to, apologize for this, Or we're going to invoke the 25th Amendment, and, we don't know what the Senate is going to do. We have no idea what the Senate is going to do. Because during January 6th, when he's back at the White House, Pat Cipollone witnesses that the president doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't want to stop it. He doesn't want to intervene. He doesn't want to call them off. He doesn't want to tweet at them. He doesn't want to make a video to tell them to go home. He doesn't want to do any of it. So the next day, they're talking about the 25th Amendment.
Oh, there you go. So the cabinet members, some of them had already
resigned. Yeah, Mitch McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao, she said, well, I just can't set this behavior aside. And so she resigned. And Betsy...
Yeah, they gave the meatloaf defense. I'll do anything for Trump, but that I won't do.
Right, but but I won't do that. I would do anything for Trump, but I won't do that. I can't do that. I won't do that. I won't do that.
It's probably better you mess up the lyrics so we don't get hit with a copyright.
Yeah. John in Oregon.
Hey, Randy.
Hi.
Hey, what a day. What a day of testimony.
That was stunning, really. And we're not even done.
No, but today was, okay, so you were just talking about the president's behavior regarding, I guess, assault on a federal agent is what maybe a lawyer would call it.
Yes.
Yeah. What really struck me was what's her name? Cassidy Hutchinson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was describing that she walked into the dining room of the White House where she found a waiter cleaning ketchup off a wall.
Yeah,
because he had thrown a plate, and that this was not like a special kind of thing. It was they were used to him taking a tablecloth and just flinging it everywhere.
Yeah, he's like he's like Teresa from The Real Housewives of New Jersey. He just flips tables, is what he does. Yeah, he loses his stuff and he just flips a table. Yeah, and throws plates at the wall and threw his lunch at the wall is what she said. Yeah,
it was ridiculous. There was a show on the comedy channel called The President Show with Anthony Adamunic.
Yeah, Howard loves it.
It ran for one season. I think it was because they considered it to be too far out there.
Oh, it was great. It was good.
Going back and rewatching some of those clips, now you're like, oh my God, that was like a historical documentary.
So was The Simpsons when you think about it. The Simpsons had this crazy episode way back in the day where Donald Trump became the president. It was supposed to be, like a sarcastic satire, like a mocking look at American politics that a guy like Donald Trump from a reality TV show would end up being the president. And that happened. That's how crazy
Randy,
we've gotten.
Randy, I'm in Portland, which is the home of Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons. And I'm a bit of a Simpsons fan myself. And, of course, who the president was in that scenario was Lisa. And I don't know, but oh, gosh. I mean, in a way, I really want Hillary to run in 2024 and win win in win in a landslide, win the Dakotas in Missouri and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe.
Hey, listen. If Hillary were the president of the United States for the 4 years prior to that, first of all, she'd be president again. But none of this would have happened. Not any of the violence, not any of the white nationalism, not any of the unleashing of the Hitler Youth, which is what these freaks are. Not any of the abortion bans and women who are going to drop dead now in childbirth or trying to see it through and not go to jail. I mean, all of this disgusting crap that we've been put through would never have happened. And nobody would be happy with Hillary.
Keep it up, Randy.
You keep it up. You're the man. You're the impregnator. The sperminator. I'm serious. Because none of this would have happened, no one would appreciate the presidency of Hillary Clinton.
Donate.
Mary had a little man.
Lamb, lamb, lamb.
We believe that all men are created
equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Not long after the rioters broke into the Capitol, you described what happened with White House counsel Pat Cipollone.
No more than a minute and a half later, I see Pat Cipollone barreling down the hallway towards our office and rushed right in, looked at me, said, "Is Mark in his office?" And I said, "Yes." He just looked at me and started shaking his head and went over, opened Mark's office door, stood there with the door propped open, and said something to Mark is still sitting on his phone. I remember glancing and he's still sitting on his phone. And I remember Pat saying to him something to the effect of, "The rioters have gotten to the Capitol, Mark. We need to go down and see the president now." And Mark looked up at him and said, "He doesn't want to do anything, Pat." And Pat said something to the effect of, and very clearly had said this to Mark, something to the effect of, "Mark, something needs to be done or people are going to die and the blood's going to be on your effing hands. This is getting out of control. I'm going down there." And at that point, Mark stood up from his couch, both of his phones in his hand. He had his glasses on still. He walked out with Pat. He put both of his phones on my desk and said, "Let me know if Jim calls." And they walked out and went down to the dining room.
That's Jim Jordan. Let me know if Jim calls. It's Jim Jordan. Okay, so Mark Meadows, how much screen time does this guy get? I mean, it's just like an amazing thing. Is he on Grindr? Is that Tinder? Is he swiping? Is he playing Candy Crush? He's always playing with he's fingering his phone is what he's doing. Probably to distract himself from the fact that he works for a baby dirtbag. It's unbelievable. So here you have the White House counsel who doesn't represent the president. He represents the office of the presidency. And he goes to the chief of staff to the president of the United States and he says, "You need to get the president to do something now or blood will be shed and that blood will be on your hands." And Mark Meadows' response is, the president doesn't want to do anything. There are so many crimes that are being racked up just in one day, in one afternoon. It's incredible. This is amazing. And there's just a little more. There's a little more crime. There's a little more criminal activity here to document. Okay, here is what happened once the chanting of "Hang Mike Pence" was audible to the president of the United States. His crowd, his white nationalist Hitler youth, who are armed to the teeth, they have broken in. We already know that a person is dead. We know that Ashley Babbitt has been shot now, right? And they're warning the president that he needs to intervene because blood is now on his hands and they're going after his vice president. Okay?
I remember Pat saying something to the effect of, "Mark, we need to do something more. They're literally calling for the vice president to be effing hung." And Mark had responded something to the effect of, "You heard him, Pat. He thinks Mike deserves it. He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong." To which Pat said something, "This is effing crazy. We need to be doing something more." Briefly stepped into Mark's office. And when Mark had said something to the effect of, "He doesn't think they're doing anything wrong," knowing what I had heard briefly in the dining room, coupled with Pat discussing the "Hang Mike Pence" chants in the lobby of our office, and then Mark's response there to be the rioters in the Capitol that were chanting for the vice president to be hung.
Let me pause here on this point.
Yeah.
As rioters chanted "Hang Mike Pence," the president of the United States, Donald Trump, said that, quote, "Mike deserves it," and that those rioters were not doing anything wrong.
This is like, attempted assassination of a vice president of the United States, and the president of the United States has a chance to stop it and decides they're doing the right thing. They're not doing anything wrong. Mike deserves it. Okay. And then the final crime here, this seems to be witness tampering, is what this is.
While our committee has seen many witnesses, including many Republicans, testify fully and forthrightly. This has not been true of every witness. And we have received evidence of one particular practice that raises significant concern. Our committee commonly asks witnesses connected to Mr. Trump's administration or campaign whether they've been contacted by any of their former colleagues or anyone else who attempted to influence or impact their testimony. Without identifying any of the individuals involved, let me show you a couple of samples of answers we received to this question. First, here's how one witness described phone calls from people interested in that witness's testimony. Quote, "What they said to me is as long as I continue to be a team player, they know I'm on the right team. I'm doing the right thing. I'm protecting who I need to protect. You know I'll continue to stay in good graces in Trump world." And they have reminded me a couple of times that Trump does read transcripts. And just keep that in mind as I proceed through my interviews with the committee. Here's another sample in a different context. This is a call received by one of our witnesses. Quote, "A person let me know you have your deposition tomorrow.
A person.
He wants me to let you know he's thinking about you. He knows you're loyal and you're going to do the right thing when you go in for your deposition." I think most Americans know that attempting to influence witnesses to testify untruthfully presents very serious concerns. We will be discussing these issues as a committee, carefully considering our next steps.
We have a thug. We had a thug as president of the United States, and that thug got to put 3 Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court and 147 members of the House of Representatives know this. They all know this. Jim Jordan's on the phone. Giuliani is talking to everybody. Gosar knows it. Mo Brooks knows it. At least he lost his primary, right? Everybody knows it. 147 members of the House of Representatives know all this. They know every bit of it. And they still object to certifying the election after January 6th. Okay. And then we go through an impeachment of the president for this behavior, his second impeachment. Okay. His second. The first was extorting Mr. Zelensky, President Zelensky in Ukraine, who now has a major war in his hands. Okay. The second impeachment was for this. It was for this behavior. Well, all the senators, Ron Johnson knew it. Rubio knows it. Portman knew it. Every one of the senators knows this. They know what happened. They were there. Some of them were there. Others of them, they know what the evidence is against Donald Trump. They know maybe they learned today that he tried to strangle his own Secret Service agent. Maybe they just learned today that he was witness tampering. Maybe that portion of it wasn't known to them then. But they voted not to remove this president. They voted not to remove him, this Republican Party. I mean, it's just stunning. They had in their hands the ability to do justice. And meanwhile, what do we have? We have a conspiracy to defraud the United States of America. We have the conspiracy to obstruct a congressional certification of an election, to change the results of an election, okay? Right there, that's like 40 years. Okay, we have the assault of a federal officer. We have incitement to riot. We have dereliction of duty. We have, on the cherry of the cake of that, is witness tampering. And there are Republicans in the House and in the Senate currently serving who are under oath to protect and defend the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, who knew this and know it now.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, so yesterday we learned that the Department of Justice Inspector General, David Horowitz, the IG, actually got to a court and showed probable cause that the people who aided and abetted all of this criminal activity, okay, the Jeffrey Clarks of the world, the John Eastmans of the world, that they, even though they took the Fifth Amendment, 100 times each under oath, they wouldn't testify. They had probable cause to believe that they had violated the laws of the United States of America. And I'm guessing those laws included conspiracy to defraud the United States and obstruct an official congressional proceeding. Now, you wouldn't think that obstructing a congressional proceeding was like that big of a crime, but it is. It's like a 20-year penalty in the federal code. Anyway, because it was the inspector general that went and to the court and made the showing of probable cause to seize the phones of these two lawyers, which is a high bar, okay, to meet. And the court recognized, the argument that was being made by the Inspector General's office at the Department of Justice and granted those warrants to seize those phones. So they now have the phones of Jeffrey Clark and John Eastman, who were working to overturn the results of the 2020 election. All that we experienced today, all that we heard today was one day in that effort. That's all we heard was this one day in the effort to overturn the results of a free and fair election. It's just, it's unbelievable. This one day involves so much violence against members of Congress, violence threatened to assassinate the vice president of the United States, while the president of the United States looks on and says, they're not doing anything wrong. He deserves it. Let them do it. Let them do it. I mean, it's just so unbelievable. He's defending people who are trying to assassinate our vice president of the United States, whether I like him or not, and I don't. He doesn't deserve to die at the hands of, crazy people who are unleashed into a whirlwind of fury by the president of the United States. I mean, it's just so unbelievable. Rudy Giuliani, today we learned, had, prior knowledge of what was going to go down on the 6th. Now we know Eastman was the planner, the architect of the plan to delay the certification of the electors on January 6th. Why? Because he thought that if we couldn't certify the electors on January 6th, then we would be able to rerun the election, because the Constitution calls for January 6th to be the day that the electoral votes are counted and handed over and certified by Congress. So we have Rudy participating in this. We have Mark Meadows participating in this. Oh, and by the way, today we learned that both Rudy and Mark Meadows and Matt Gaetz and others, but those are the ones who were named today, all asked for pardons. I'm pretty sure in the end we're going to find out that every one of the 147 members of the House who still voted not to certify the election after all this violence, after these people with weapons invaded our Capitol, and the President of the United States refused to defend our Capitol, or the Speaker of the House, or the Vice President of the United States, okay, or any of his supporters, just refused to defend the Capitol police officers who are being literally crushed almost to death, who lost fingers and toes, and some of them had strokes. A woman who was, a clear indication of a meth head, she was one of Trump's supporters. She died on the scene, and then they trampled over her. They literally trampled on her dead body. It's like, over my dead body. Really happened. So, and now we have Clark and Eastman and Jordan and Getz and probably, Gosar and all of them, all asking for pardons because they know what they did to this country. They know what they did. And what they did to this country should not go unpunished. We had a crazy man-baby, violent, white supremacist president. We have had that happen to us. And the ramifications and the it's going to ripple on and on and on because the deal with the devil that Mitch McConnell made, and Trump is the devil, and the deal that they made with the devil himself was to get 3 uber psycho Supreme Court justices who were not suitable in temperament, in judgment, in rational interpretation of American rights as they are written down in the Constitution. These were people who had an agenda to get rid of constitutional protections, to get rid of things that women, gay people, everybody in this country relies on the right to privacy. They think it's a thing. It's not a thing anymore. And so the consequences of a Trump presidency, because these three are in their 50s, are going to ripple through our democracy for the next 30 years, unless and until we get serious about doing away with the filibuster and getting some of these rights literally codified into law, making them laws. And making them law, and we need to literally address the Supreme Court as it is right now, because it's dangerous. This is crazy, and this is dangerous. This is anti-American. It's antithetical to, a representative democracy, republic, whatever you want to call us. It's just, they can't live side by side. You can't have a court that is interested and willing to take away civil rights, rights to privacy, due process rights, the separation between church and state. We cannot live like this. We can't. And one of the things that, the Congress could do and will be able to do, if you give more senators of the Democratic ilk, people who would hold a president who did this accountable for what he did, for all that he did. If you would vote that way, if you could just show up and give us the majority that we need, we could get rid of the Electoral College, and we don't even need you don't even need a constitutional amendment to do it. You just get there's a compact, okay? It's a compact that needs to be signed on to by enough states so that we're talking about 270 electoral votes, right? If we could get a compact that simply says whoever wins the popular vote in the entirety of the United States gets our state's electors, so that we can get the majority of Americans represented yet again, half of our problems would be over. As far as the Supreme Court goes, it's pretty easy to add seats, and if you're not interested in adding seats, because they'll call packing the court. No, they want your children to be packing for school. Children should have guns. Fetuses should have guns. Everybody should have a gun. They want to pack that way. I want to pack the court. But if you're not into packing the court, you could still limit judicial review. You could demand that it be a unanimous decision if the Supreme Court wants to undo a law.
To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Well, the rest of the world cannot understand what is happening in this country now. What the Supreme Court is doing could not happen in a democracy. In a democracy, the membership of the Supreme Court would reflect the democratically expressed will of the people. That means the Supreme Court would reflect the democratically expressed will of the majority of the people, because the Supreme Court justices would be appointed by presidents elected by a majority of voters.
Oh, there's an
idea. But that is not the way we elect presidents in this country. We are the only country in the world where the person who comes in second with votes can end up in the presidency. And that is thanks to the long benign blemish in the Constitution the founders called the Electoral College, which has turned into a deadly cancer on the United States of America that is poised to kill the first word of the name of this country, united. We are now poised to go from being the United States of America to being the States of America, when a Supreme Court whose membership is the product of minority rule will defy 70% of the American people and revoke a constitutional right for the first time in history.
It's sick.
The vision for America, as expressed by Samuel Alito and his clerks in the first draft of the Alito opinion to overturn Roe versus Wade, is a country where your rights will depend on where you live.
How insane are we going to let ourselves get? Is there any bottom to how crazy you will allow us to get? Is there no bottom? So some of the solutions to the problem are really not that hard. They do require more senators than we have now, because we have 2 senators of the Democratic ilk who will not get rid of the filibuster and pass laws by a simple majority when we already have an election system that doesn't reward the majority with the presidency. And then we have, a gerrymandered House that doesn't allow for the true and fair representation of your district, but instead draws lines to favor the party in power. And on top of it, you've got a filibuster that needs to be met with a supermajority of senators in a 50-50 Senate. So here's some of the easy fixes. 2 more senators of the Democratic persuasion. And again, there are many, many places you could look for 2 more senators of the Democratic persuasion. Pennsylvania is one of my favorite places to look because I think John Fetterman is very appealing to all different types of people because he's real and because he's plain spoken and because he's a tough guy and he's a Democrat and he's running against a crazy person to replace Pat Toomey. I also think Tim Ryan could win in Ohio against lunatic, fringy J.D. Vance, who has flipped more than Flipper on issues of great importance and whether or not he supports Donald Trump. Remember, J.D. Vance, he compared Donald Trump to Hitler, and now he's all about Donald Trump. We can do better in Ohio. Tim Ryan would be better. He's a veteran. He's a combat guy. I mean, honestly. Here in Florida, get rid of Marco Rubio and give me a police chief. Val Demings is a former police chief. She's running against Marco Rubio for that Senate seat in Florida. Florida women, wake up, unless you want to wake up with your daughters not being able to get Plan B or a pill, or if they're raped or even if they have a one-night stand and they're not ready. You're going to let the government make that decision for your child in the name of individualism and your God-given right to liberty? This is crazy. Once we get a few more Democrats in the Senate, it will then be possible to get rid of the filibuster. Hence, we will be able to create a path forward on all of these issues. We could actually say, we're going to pass a law that protects Roe v. Wade. We're going to protect women in this country. We're going to protect gay marriage in this country. We're going to protect the right to privacy in this country. We're going to protect contraception in this country as much as we protect guns. I heard Chelsea Handler say that, it'd be better if her vagina was like an AK because then, she'd be able to not have it regulated. Love that girl. But anyway, we could actually put that down on paper into law and pass it with a simple majority if we got rid of the filibuster. Okay, then what? Then we pass a law that applies to the Supreme Court. And what does that law say? That law says that if we pass a law and it's signed by the President of the United States, then we need the Supreme Court to have a unanimous vote to overturn it. Can't have a 6-3 saying, we don't like that one, so we're going to find some 1868-ish reason that you can't have protections for gay, because gay people weren't included in the 14th Amendment. We didn't recognize gay. We didn't recognize women. We didn't recognize, I guess we did. We just about recognized African Americans voting, but just scarcely. But we need a unanimous decision from the Supreme Court if they want to overturn a law that's been passed by the House, the Senate, and signed by the president. Solves a lot of our problems, doesn't it? Okay, now on to the elections, the presidential ones. Okay, so what we want to do there is something called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. It has a name. I kept blanking out on the name yesterday, and today I finally put it in front of me so I could have it. It's called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. You can look it up on the internets. There are several states that have already agreed to award all of their electoral votes to the National Popular Vote winner. Hey, there's an idea. You know, if we had that, we would have had President Hillary Clinton instead of President Donald Trump. If we had that, we wouldn't have had President Bush, President W. Bush, in the first place. We wouldn't have Alito. We wouldn't have Gorsuch. We wouldn't have Amy Grinnan Barrett. We wouldn't have Brett Kavanaugh. You understand? These are presidents that put Supreme Court justices on a court that never won the majority of the vote. This is what's destroying us. Everybody's sitting there going, well, I'm for the right to privacy. 70% of women want the right to choose. They don't want the government getting involved in these decisions. 90% of Americans want background checks before any lunatic can get a weapon, an AR-15 or an AK. Why can't we get our way? Because it's not a majority rules country.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
The court actually took a constitutional right that has been recognized for half a century and took it from the women of America. That's shocking.
It is. It is shocking that this miscreant and his aiders and abettors, this animal, this thug, this creep, this man baby, this if I can't have America, nobody can person, is burning it all down to the ground as we speak. And Americans are flailing around like, how do we stop it? How do we stop it? And I'm telling you, it isn't that hard. It's just not that hard. You need to pass legislation protecting these things that we cherish. Privacy rights in our bedrooms, privacy rights in our medical decisions, freedom to travel. Can you believe that we live in a country where we actually have to now legislate a woman's right to travel from state to state? Interstate travel is now a thing that we have to give back to women. Freedom to travel from state to state. I mean, this is just, it's insane. And it's all because we had people who just want to control us more than they care about this country. And they were willing to go along with this this lunatic. They were willing to do whatever they needed to do in order to affect this kind of control over the people, a minority control over the people. It's unbelievable. I sit here every single day, ever since the Supreme Court opinion. Well, actually, this has been since they refused to remove Donald Trump, even though he was on his way out the door. They should have done it so he could never give rep. I mean, the man ripped off his own supporters. His own supporters. He told them he wanted money from them and raised $250 million, $250 million off of hardworking people who thought he had had the election taken from him. And what was really happening was theft of you. He was thieving from you. He lied and cheated and stole from his own supporters to enrich himself on the way out the freaking door. Wow. It's amazing. The long list of crimes. It's endless. It really is. Len in New York.
Hey there.
Hi.
When you were reading transcripts or you were playing a tape, the thing that most disturbed me after a short while was with the fact that they called this animal Sir. That that he got all the politeness. If he were anybody but the president, they would have thrown him in jail for doing the things he was doing just on that day, overtly.
I can't believe that he tried to strangle a Secret Service agent, and he's not dead on the sidewalk. Do you know what I mean? It's just like amazing. Don't try that at home, anybody.
Yeah, really. So let's hope that, there'll be some senses that that we can sell people on the idea that we need more Democrats. I think I sent you a picture of that T-shirt I made.
I just want everyone to understand that if the shoe were on the other foot, okay, and the Republicans were in leadership positions, there is no way that they wouldn't get rid of the filibuster to pass some of the most repressive ideas that they have. Okay, there is no way that if Mitch McConnell was the majority leader right now, he wouldn't get rid of the filibuster like he did for Gorsuch. He got rid of the filibuster for Supreme Court justices so he could put Gorsuch. Well, if the shoe is on the other foot and Mitch McConnell should get the majority leadership back, he will get rid of the legislative filibuster. No doubt about it. And he will do a national abortion ban. Okay? There is no question in my mind that he will do that to placate the base while he steals the Social Security and Medicare trust funds. That is what they will do.
Well, I'm hoping what we do is get rid of the filibuster to expand the Supreme Court, and adding another 4 justices in the following way would make everybody very upset for about a minute, and then they'd realize they'd never want to change it.
Right.
We should have a Supreme Court justice nominated for a 26-year term every 2 years, regardless of who the president is on July 1st. And then take all the politics out of who's the president. It doesn't matter. He's only going to get 2 picks anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many really good, sound ideas that are floating around that could be, deployed in our behalf to protect us, to protect our rights as a majority of, Americans who all want background checks, who all want the government out of our medical decisions, who all believe that, the government shouldn't have a decision about who can get married. Everybody agrees on this. These are things that we're good with, we're comfortable with. The rest of the world is too. We're becoming this outlier third world, banana republic because we actually enshrine minority rule in every aspect of our voting practices, whether it's the Senate, whether it's the Electoral College, whether it's the congressional. Here's another thing with congressional districts to stop gerrymandering. Let's just lower the number of people that are required to form a district and add some more representation. More representation is better than less, as we can all see.
It's going to be tough, but the thing we have to make sure about is we get people to understand how important the next election is.
Yes, it's extremely important.
It can all flow from there with a couple more senators in Pennsylvania, maybe, and I forgot where else. Wisconsin. I think Ron Johnson can be shaken out of his tree.
We need to shake him out of the tree. That man is deranged, okay? He really is. He's a sick, sad man, okay? He's got to go. Listen, Grassley in Iowa, he's 88 years old. Really, Iowa? Really? You don't deserve somebody who's really going to represent you in the Senate, in the United States Senate? Come on. Florida, look at your daughter. Look at your sons. My God. Boys are affected by this, too, because the choices they will have to make are going to be extremely different.
Remind somebody if they accept rape and incest that it just threatens boys more with possibly being accused of rape just for a woman to be able to get an abortion.
Well, there's that, but that's very extreme. But I'm talking generally to mothers of children who are 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 who are just on the cusp of having to live in this freaking state.
This was my issue when I was 15 years old. I couldn't get up in front of anybody and speak. I took a speech class. We had to debate, and 2 years before Roe versus Wade, I debated this issue. There was the first political thoughts in my head, and I had to do some research. And back in the 70s, 5,000 women a year were dying from illegal abortions. So
it's not just women that die. You know what happens, don't you? I mean, women who can't, function, who just can't have their 13th child or their 12th child or their 9th child. They sort of tend to leave the baby in a basket, and that's the nicest, disposal of a baby that you'll ever hear about. The other stuff you won't hear about.
Some jump off a bridge.
Some jump off bridges. Some leave their babies in the woods. Okay, this stuff happens.
Some complications of childbirth.
Yeah, they do. They do. And, IVF is also, people who want families won't be able to pursue IVF, in vitro fertilization, 21st century science, to help you have a family. But I want women who have sons to also look at their sons and realize that their choices in life will be different if their girlfriends have to have a baby at 15. I mean, this is real, 18th century stuff. This is real, Listen, I'm going to tell you something. Abortion was legal in this country, almost the entirety of this country in this way. No one was ever prosecuted, if they drank bitter herbs or, did something before quickening. It actually had a name. The movement of the baby, right? That was 16 to 18 weeks. You were allowed to do whatever you wanted before then. This is crazy. This is so maddening that people don't understand our own history in this country. But I'm telling you, the solutions are all there to be pursued, but only and not until we win a couple of Senate seats and keep the House. Then everything to fix this broken system of ours is possible. And if and when that happens, and Democrats are disappointing, then we'll pursue avenues to get third parties electable.